Hello everybody, my name is Lee Mackenzie. I'm a teacher trainer, self-tutor and director of studies. And welcome to my slideshow video. I've chosen organic as the slide format, so I hope you like it. I'll try a different format for the next one. So the first question here, this is a slideshow about needs analysis, obviously. The first question here is, what is a needs analysis? You can pause the video and think about this for a few seconds. And according to Noonan, these are the answers. An analysis of the learner's language, this is often called a placement test, or a linguistic needs analysis, or a diagnostic. It's part of a needs analysis, but a needs analysis is often considered to be just the information about the learner and the beliefs about the learning process. Noonan lists these as being three elements of the needs analysis. Why do a needs analysis? Again, you can pause the video and think about this for a few seconds. First reason is to help negotiate the gap between learners and teachers' beliefs about language learning. So, the learner may believe that the best way to learn language is by memorizing vocabulary. It may be your opinion too, but if it's not, then there may be some reluctance to engage in certain activities. A popular belief of students is that they have to know the nuts and bolts of the language, but it's a question of interpretation. How much do they need to know about the nuts and bolts of the language? Do they need to know all the meta language, or only what is necessary to be able to put the language into use? So it's important knowing whether you're on the same page with your learner, and if not, that obviously needs to be addressed. Obviously, if for no other reason, you want the learner to think about their own learning. And it's something that they may not have actually thought about in any depth. So giving the opportunity to do this will be very helpful. Obviously, there's a gap between where they're at and where they want to be. In certain cases, it may be very clear that they want to get to a certain level. For example, they need to pass an IELTS exam. Then it's very clear that they need to get a certain grade on that. And finding where they are and how far off they are is obviously very, very useful. Obviously, it's important to plan your lessons, and you could just look at 2 pages in the book and say, okay, well, how am I going to approach these activities? But knowing about your learner and what they like and what they don't like, and what they're interested in and what they're not, or what they need and what they don't need, is obviously going to inform the choices that you make, or should. Yeah, the learning goal shouldn't be complete pages 6 and 7 in the book. It should be, okay, this learner has a deficit in forming superlatives correctly. So that could be one of the specific learning goals. And obviously, I'll go back to the example of going through the book page by page. Yeah, if you're not paid very much, obviously you maybe don't want to spend a lot of time planning, But I think that students do notice the difference and will appreciate that you have created, adapted and selected material which is more relevant to them than the material in the book. For example, fashion is a unit in many course books, but I have absolutely no interest in fashion. And even though I'm quite competent in Spanish and German, I would struggle to speak about that topic in those languages. And if the teacher tried to teach me, I would probably say to the teacher, well, I'm actually not that interested. So knowing that in advance is going to help you when planning and choosing material. And you want to find out about your students, because if you express genuine interest in your students, they appreciate it. So the more you know about them, the better. Key question, when should we do a needs analysis? Again, you can pause the video and think about this for a few seconds. The answer should be pretty obvious. Before a course or the first day of the course. Now, if you work in a good school, you can expect that they're going to give you some information about the students other than their level and their name before the course, and that's usually based on a needs analysis. In many cases, though, a needs analysis is not done for various reasons. So you can do it on the first day of the course. But the needs emerge as the course progresses as well. So every lesson you're reflecting on whether the materials that you created, selected, adapted were appropriate for your learner, whether the learning aims were appropriate, and you would review those every lesson and realign your expectations of where you want them to be and the goals that you think they should achieve. So what to include in a needs analysis at the beginning of a course? Again, you can pause the video and think about this for a few seconds. Obviously, previous experiences, their learning background, where they've learned English before, their motivation, intrinsic, extrinsic. And if it's a private student and the schedule hasn't been set, you want to know when they're available, where they think they need to improve. Again, it may not be where you think they need to improve, but knowing what they think their strengths and weaknesses are is going to help you as well negotiate the outcomes of the course. Needs and wants. Again, needs and wants are different from your perspective and from their perspective. What they think they need and what you think they need may not be the same. What they want may not be realistic, and that needs to be addressed as well. Learning style or preferences. I think this has been overemphasized because, as far as I'm aware, there is no research which suggests that catering to a learner's learning style is useful. There's actually research to suggest the opposite, that not catering or pushing them to be more kinesthetic or more visual, depending on their learning style, may be more useful. Of course, you need to know the level, and the more time you spend with the student, the more accurately you will be able to assess their level. And again, the beliefs about the learning process, which may not be the same as yours. So here's a little task for you to help consolidate these concepts. Order the above from most important to least important, 1 being the most important, 8 being least important. And you can pause the video and think about that for a few seconds. Okay, moving on. Here's another task for you. You're going to create your own needs analysis. So these are the categories that we typically include on a needs analysis. Just try to think of one question that you could ask a student to get information for each of these categories. For example, available. The question would be, when are you available? And here are my sample questions that you could ask a learner. How long have you been learning English? Now, if they can't answer that question, it also tells you that their level is pretty low. Why do you want to learn? When can you attend classes? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you use English for? What kind of activities do you like to do in class? And what's the best way to learn language? All these questions have a few things in common. What do you think those things are? You can again pause the video and think about it for a minute. Well, they all have the following things in common. They're all open-ended questions because you can get more information from your students by asking open-ended questions, and more information about their language level as well. They use graded language. They try to use simple language. They are not loaded questions. Although you could argue what's the best way to learn language suggests that you think there is a best way to learn language, which may not be the case. But they're certainly not loaded in the same way as these two questions. Why can't you learn language by memorizing vocabulary? Well, maybe the learner thinks you can. And what was wrong with your last teacher? Well, it implies there was something wrong with the last teacher. And they avoid double-barrel questions. If you ask what are your strengths and weaknesses, the student may give you half the answer you wanted, the first part, and neglect the second part. Okay, here's another task for you. These are written responses to the questions on the previous page. Pause the video and think about what the questions are. Do you remember? And here are the answers. So hopefully these questions will be useful. You can use them in your first lesson with a new class. You could get them to answer these questions in pairs, to write down their partner's responses. If it's a one-on-one class, you can answer you can ask the questions. You could get the student to write the answers if you want a sample of their written work. And here's another task for you, just to end. These are the written responses which we just looked at earlier. Think about what is this student's linguistic needs. What else do we learn about the student from these answers? And what are her beliefs about the learning process? And it would take me more than the allotted time to go through the answers to this, so you'll just have to tell me next time I see you. And here's some useful links for you. The second one gives you 15 ways of doing a needs analysis, which gives you some interesting ideas. And if you're really into this kind of stuff, you can look at the book there by Noonan, Learner-Centered Curriculum. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you very much for your attention and for listening. See you again soon with a new presentation format.